All right, let's call the meeting to order at 6:01 or 6 o'clock PM. And first order of business would be roll call.
Nyla Fry,
Here.
Trisha Brown,
Here.
Sam Kaufman.
Here.
Kristen Runge,
Here.
Aaron Moran, Joe Zitzelsberger,
Here.
Robert McPherson.
Here.
Next item is confirmation of open meeting compliance.
I can confirm that the draft agenda was published in the Waunakee Tribune on 5/31. The final agenda was posted in all three official posting locations on 5/29 and 5/30. And the final agenda and packet were made available online on 5/29. Just two important requests for the audience members. Please be sure you sign in with your name, address, and municipality for accurate record keeping. And those interested in participating in public comment, please give me your form prior to that agenda item.
All right, next up is public comment. And do we have any forms? And other note for public comment, please step to the podium and hit the button so it turns green, and we have 3 minutes for each public comment.
You want to let the online folks know?
Yes, and online folks, if you are interested in making a public comment, please raise your hand and Todd will call on you.
So the first up is Stephen Ramish at 500 Fifth Street, Waunakee.
Take it away. Yep.
Good evening, everybody. I just wanted to make a comment on the TIF district. I live on 500 Fifth Street, which is 5 blocks from here. When you were doing Highway or Century Avenue, I guess you'd call it, it was a TIF project, and I didn't know it until I checked into it. Kilkenny Farms actually had the TIF on that street from the fire station to Medford Road. 6.25 million was put towards that road at no cost to the taxpayers. People say it's costing taxpayers. It's not costing taxpayers. I had floods in my basement because of the road, the way it was set up. And I went out of my way and I got a hold of Kilkenny, Don Tierney, and he worked with the village and found a way. We put a storm sewer in front of my yard there and eliminate. I was getting 6 inches of water in my garage. And it completely solved it once the project was done. So I really feel the TIF is a great thing. I don't know if the village would even do the job if they didn't get it. 6.25 is a lot of money. So thanks for your time.
All right, thank you very much. Next up.
John Dooley, 2611 Dublin Way, Waunakee.
Notes here, but when I was younger, I was a quick wit. Some say nitwit now, but anyway, I'm here to just a couple items, business item 7 and probably 8, or I've got 7. And that's to reconsider the public improvements from the meeting of 5/20. And I hope you vote to yes to at least reconsider it. And as I see it, the important part to me is the off-road path for safer conditions for pedestrians and motorists. I don't know all the history of everything here in the village, but I do know in that particular instance, it seemed like there were 4 parties that were involved in that thing. The village administration and staff. And I from what I can see and read, they worked very diligently and very hard to put together in a very short time frame a proposal that was for the greater good of the entire village. The school district, in cooperation with the village staff, also worked very hard for the greater good of the village. The developer, the Tierney family, who again demonstrated they love to cooperate for the greater good of the village with the district and the staff. And of course, then the 4th part of that stool would be the village board. And we all know that it was declined on the 3-3 vote to work for the greater good. So I guess I would encourage the 3 nay votes to at least reconsider tonight and put aside some of the differences and some of the what I consider kind of pettiness of the voting. If you don't like TIFs or you don't like TIDs or whatever, you can still vote for what's really good for the village. The children, the pedestrians, the motorists. If you're hurt that your committee was bypassed and you don't like where the new school's sited, all those sorts of things, you can still vote yes for the betterment of the community and for the greater good. lastly, if you don't care that the developer has constantly done what I think is the right thing for the village and all the development, you can still vote for the greater good of this community. So let's join the village, the school, the developer, and just do the right thing tonight and hopefully reconsider it and then vote yes for the greater good of this village. Thank you.
Thank you, John. Next up.
Jack Heidemann at 1440 Blue Ridge Trail, Waunakee.
I echo the comments of John. I think when you look at the trail, not only the trail, but also the traffic flow, you sit there and you look at the more traffic we put in there on a 2-lane road doesn't necessarily make sense. So if we are thinking about safety, you've heard me chime week after week, about the path, but I think the road improvements over time are going to be very positive. I think the other thing too that we have to keep in mind, and as I've dug into this a little bit, just our water issues. If we need another well, and in that TIF district there is a well site, and if we don't, if we slow down growth, because of we don't have enough water, what's that going to do to the school district? If we don't have houses, we don't have kids. We've done study after study, and the apartment buildings that we're putting up, the multifamily units are great. But if you go and look at the study that Mark Rawford have done for us, there's not a lot of kids that those apartment buildings are bringing to the community. So I think we, again, looking at the greater good of the community is very important. And one of the things, as I go out into the community and talk to people, why did they move to this community? It's because of the school district. And if we have to start cutting budgets, we're not going to have the school system that we have today. So we need to continue to grow. We continue to grow with more housing. And I also want to applaud, the village and the staff, and our administration. We've worked diligently over the last several weeks to put together a very positive plan. One of the things that we're going to be talking about, if you guys approve the trail, is making the front of our school district property on Woodland a right of way. And what that does is it takes the trail all the way down to Eldora, which is, again, improving, the trail system in our village. The other thing that this is going to do is, again, putting that crosswalk at Ganser is important, because that's where people, that's where people are going to pass. They're not going to walk up the street to push the button to come across. So again, I applaud the village and staff, and thank you for your time, and hopefully a positive outcome.
Thank you, Jack. Next up.
Eloise Wilson at 1612 Blue Ridge Trail, Waunakee.
It won't take but a minute of your time, and I seem to be kind of unrelated, and yet I can see that I'm related to what's going on here tonight as well. I've been a homeowner on Blue Ridge Trail for 25 years and enjoyed all of it. I kind of smile every time Don Tierney talks about a livable community. It's much more than that. It's a very special place. The other thing, I met Don, first of all, in 1998 at a parade of homes. And he talked about his vision, and I laughed because I thought, this is kind of hokey. but his visions have turned into the real thing. And when the Bowles Conservancy was cemented, when that whole thing was arranged, I don't know if you've ever been on the Bowles Trail, but in the spring, the prairie grasses and the flowers and all that kind of thing are beautiful. But in the fall, when the monarchs start their trip south from there and the bushes just drip with monarchs, it's an amazing place. And all I wanted to do tonight was just say, I'm leaving my home and I'm going to go, but I'm staying in Waunakee. So I guess what I'm really saying is I wanted to thank Don Tierney for making this a very, very wonderful journey. Thanks for your time.
Thank you, Eloise. Next up.
Gary Herzberg at 1804 Athens Circle, Waunakee.
Hi, I'm Gary Hertzberg, 1804 Athens Court. I'm here in support of the Tierney project west of Highway Q. I've known and worked with the Tierney family, gosh, probably for the last 25 years. The first one was a local project we did to build Tierney Park. The local residents actually did that. It wasn't part of Don's project to do. It was the villages. The local residents built it, but Don and his two boys were side by side working with us, helping build that park, which today is still an awesome facility. Next was the Bowles Conservancy. I know that the Tierney family had a major role in securing that land, and it's probably, I don't know, the masterpiece of Waunakee, I think, in my mind. It's just a beautiful, beautiful site. Probably 20 years ago, I remember meeting in Westport with John Van Dinner, Tom Wilson, John Loudmeyer, Sue McDade, and Don Tierney. And we spent a morning looking at trail corridors, connectivity between Westport and Waunakee, and back there trying to understand the importance of connectivity, not only between the two communities, but between our neighborhoods. I worked for a couple days on the covered bridge with Kevin, Don's builder, and that's still a landmark here in Waunakee. I think it's just a cool thing that the Tierney family donated and said made a nice park out of it. When Waunakee needed an ice rink, the Tierney family stepped up. When we needed a football stadium, they stepped up in a big way. And that's only two that I know of. I'm sure there are many more things that they've done for the community. He's always supported, the Tierney family has always supported WanaFest, Wana Booms. They support the local service organizations in this community. When they need help, when they need some funding, they go to the Tierneys, and the Tierneys step up. And they do that because these service organizations make Waunakee the town it is today. It's just a great place to live. In a couple of weeks, the Parade of Homes will be coming to Waunakee. How many years, Don? 25? The Parade of Homes has brought thousands of families to Waunakee. They come here and they not only look at the houses, they look at the villages, they stop at our restaurants and they say, hey, this is a pretty cool place to live. So the Parade of Homes and the Tierney family has, I think, kept the Parade of Homes going for the last probably 10 years with the Madison Builders Association. So, that's been an important part of our community. I'd also like to ask Renee, maybe a project someday. I'd like to know what percentage of the residential tax base
Gary, time's up. Thank you, though.
comes
We
from
appreciate it.
Tierney developments.
Next up.
Bob Klosterman at 1918 Winchester Way, Waunakee.
Thank you. Good evening. I'm Bob Klosterman. I live on 1918 Winchester Way, which is just right on the edge of the Bowles Conservancy. And I moved here in '78 and started working with the Waunakee Veterinary Service. And one of the first people I met was Don's aunt, Peg Tierney, who some of you may or may not remember. And I remember moving into town, and she lived in the lower apartment complex, and said, you came to the right place. He says, my nephew Don's going to develop this town. And I go, oh, yeah, well, sure. But anyway, it was a very interesting conversation, and Peg had a lot of things that she did in Waunakee and was a wonderful woman. And slowly but surely, she was right. I saw the farm they had go from a basic farm to the developments over the hill from where I first lived. And then in 95, I built a house right along the Conservancy, and it's been a wonderful place. I remember when it was still a cornfield, and we made pictures of our Little League teams and sent them off for Christmas cards and things. And then slowly they became involved with the Bowles family and developed that whole area. And from our front porch and even our second floor of our house, we can look out the windows, look down, way down over the village, and you hardly feel you're in a village. I mean, you see you can see to Ashton, down to the lake everywhere, and it's wonderful. And they promised to keep the new apartments over the hill at a lower level. I cannot see them from my property. They, came up and did what they said they were going to do. So I think you can trust, my feeling is you can trust what Don's going to tell you and what he ends up doing, because that's my experience. And so slowly now, the park, every morning and every evening, there are folks circling those trails and just enjoying what Don and the Bowles family built. They come in from all directions. You can come in, go out. You can go out over the top of the hills. The kids from the old part of town can come on over the top and go to Tierney's fields in the parks below. And I can remember there are a few years when our kids were young, we couldn't get a ball field for a while to play on. And but now that is not the case. And I think a lot of that has to do with Don Tierney. So anyway, I'm in favor of Don's development. I think it's worthwhile looking into the TIF. I don't understand all the details of that, but my experience with Don has been very good. And I think we should, in my mind, the village should go forward with his plans. Thank you.
Thank you, Bob. Next up, Carla.
Steve Kraus at 1511 Bradford Bay.
President Runge, members of the board. Tonight, you're going to have an opportunity to continue a longstanding tradition here in the village, a tradition that quite frankly goes back further than the time you ever thought about running a village. And that tradition is growing our community through smart growth and through controlled growth. And the Kilkenny West project checks all the boxes in keeping that tradition alive and well. It supports our schools. It adds to our award-winning parks. And it also keeps our village government and all of the folks that are involved in keeping our village a great place, the envy of everybody in the state of Wisconsin. Thank you.
Thank you, Steve. Next up, Carla.
Linda Ashmore at 114 South Street, Waunakee.
Hi, I'm here to talk about a couple different items on the agenda. The first one is a traffic vision study. It's in the packet at $24,000. And I believe that if you go at $25,000 or over, you need to bid something out. And I just think that it feels very rushed. I've seen different things go in with traffic things that are too rushed, and then there's consequences to that. Part of the reason that we're looking at a pedestrian path or an off-road path is that Hy-Vee was the reason that they really wanted to make that really big intersection. And Hy-Vee didn't happen, but now we have 4 lanes with 2 turn lanes, and we have to worry about kids trying to cross that. I'd like to see a traffic study done first, and then bid out after you have the traffic study to see what we want to do with Q, because it's a huge corridor. The other part is the development agreement, and it's related to the path down Woodland. I don't think crossing at Q and Woodland is a good idea. I heard at other meetings that was part of the reason for the off-road path, is that you wanted to get kids to be able to cross. Again, it's 6 lanes of traffic. I went to a meeting on South Street about the new school construction, and there was a map, and the map showed a red zone, which is on the east side of Q. And that's pretty much that you want to bus those kids because it's really not safe. So if you build this path with the premise of that it's going to be great for the kids, I think that that's not the best way to get kids across. I think that you could look at alternatives. 5th and 8th Street, I have crossing guards there already. If they cross there, then they could go down Holiday or Pasadena, the different parallel streets. So, and as far as the TIF agreement, I think you've got your 4-3 votes that it'll probably pass. But I really would encourage you to look at like Newcomer did. Newcomer came in and said, we really support Waunakee. We'll pay back what we're getting as the base amount of money. And so when you look at the development agreement tonight, which will probably be in closed session, I'd like you to consider that. Thank you.
Thank you, Linda. Next up.
Jenny Aker Emberson. Could you state your address, please, for us?
Oh, sure. 6645 High Slop Road, Dane. Hi, my name is Jenny. I am part owner of Acre Builders along with my brother and sister, and I'm here to speak in favor of Kilkenny West. I've been a member of the Waunakee community almost my entire life. I attended Waunakee High School. I met my husband there. My son attends Waunakee High School now. And I just want to say a couple things about Don. So Don Tierney is one of the best developers we've ever worked with. I've been in the business for 25 years, and I will take his handshake over a written agreement from many developers. He's honest, and I trust what he says is going to happen. Don has brought the Parade of Homes to Waunakee for the past 29 years. When the housing market wasn't doing well and us builders were really struggling for several years, Don worked with us in our association to keep the Parade of Homes going so that we still had work to do when we built maybe 1 or 2 homes that entire year. The parks that Don Tierney puts in for the neighborhoods are state of the art, and they're for everyone to enjoy in the entire community, not just people who live in his neighborhoods. I don't know if people know this, but the Tierney families, the reason you can walk from Tierney Park to Bolts Conservancy, he donated all that land. And also the Tierney family, along with MLG Company, donated the land for the skate park and the hockey rink. We need developers like Don who are willing to work with builders, our association, and help make Waunakee as a whole a better place to live, not just for the people in his neighborhoods again, but for everyone. And a community that isn't growing is a community that's dying. Thank you.
Thank you, Jenny. Next up.
I have a written comment from Jared Hoffman at 218 Corey Lane. Do you want, that'd be great.
My name is Jared Hoffman, and I'm a small business owner, and I build custom homes and spec homes in the Dane County area. It can be tough sometimes to find lots to build on, whether because the large builders come in and buy up huge chunks of land and then keep it all for themselves and can't let it to other people. I started working with Don last year, and he was able to help me obtain the lots in the Waunakee area. He worked with me, and he helped me when it wasn't possible to do it on my own. And he helped me to connect with a banker so that we could make it happen and purchase those lots when I wouldn't have been able to otherwise. It's been a great experience working with Don. He's helped me immensely. And I've worked with some the same subcontractors for the past 20 years. And developments like Kilkenny Farms West not only will help me in my small business, but also will help the subcontractors that I use and help them to stay in business as well. Developments like this certainly help the community to grow, but also helps my business to grow as well. And those who count on me to give them business. Kilkenny Farms West will help more than just the community. And Don has given me that opportunity to continue what I love to do most and stay in business. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jared. Next up, Carla.
Pat Benish at 1255 Dartmouth Drive, Waunakee.
Hi, I'm here tonight in support of the development agreement between the village and Kilkenny West. The TID has been very successful, right? I've been to quite a few meetings and read as much as I can read about the topic. And I think we're in a great position to not have to borrow any more money to do these projects. The $2.3 million that's already in there is going to fund, the way that I understand this and read this, is it's going to fund this. From listening to Eller's presentation a few board meetings ago, it sounded like a developer could ask for even more money than what the Tierneys and Kilkenny is actually asking for to move forward with this. The timeline in which the contractors are able to start moving seems really good for all the reasons that have already been discussed, right? It's next time we build a new school, we might need to know how the kids are going to get there, but we're already where we are right now. So I think using this TIF money to do that really makes a lot of sense. I don't know how you wouldn't think that. And I think keeping the TIF open makes a lot of sense, especially from the state revenue sharing and listening to the school district talk about the sales tax revenue offsetting a lot of the school funding that maybe doesn't come from that increment in that area. I don't know the exact number, but I'm sure somebody could tell us. My guess is it's $800,000 a year that the school is probably getting reimbursed through the offset of what. So $800,000 for the life of that TIF seems like a lot of money to me, that we can do a lot of good things in that area to get development in that area, right? So I know some of the fear that some people had was that we're not going to spur any development, but to me, it sounds like in a couple of years, we're going to have a lot of money to make that happen in that area. So I hope that everybody decides to move forward with this, because timing will cost us money if we choose to keep on delaying. And I think a lot of people probably could talk to that, right? I know the prices keep on going up, so please approve. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Pat. Next up, Carla.
I have no further comment cards.
Do we have anyone online that's interested in making a comment?
Yep, and just, oh, yes, the one hand is up. Oh, the hand went down. Back up. All right, I'll bring Mike Foley in. Please state your name and address for the record and go ahead. Be sure to come off mute, Mike.
There we go. That's better. Am I okay now? Can you hear me?
Yep, we can.
Okay. So I live at 1618 Bellwood Drive in Southbridge. And just a real quick background. Lived in Verona for 10 years, Fitchburg for 8 years, downtown Madison for 7 years. And then I moved to Waunakee in Southbridge over 14 years ago. And I have had a family that I raised in these other communities. Now I have grandchildren that I'm actually spent a lot of time with in Southbridge, which is fantastic for them and us. And I wanted to just say that these other communities, yes, they have their pluses, but they're not nearly as well developed with the planning and all the work that Don puts into his neighborhoods. Just look at the parks, the amenities, the extensive playgrounds. I mean, the pools, the athletic fields, soccer, football, lacrosse, pickleball, which I think is pretty fantastic. He got ahead of the curve of that a couple of years ago. Basketball, ice skating rink, and of course the great school district. And I think, to be very candid, I've gotten to know Don over the years, and not only Don and his sons, Jerry, and the whole family. They're very honest. They're ethical. They're a very hardworking family. They care about providing a really first-class, family-friendly neighborhood, and they've achieved that time and time again. I support the TID or the TIF, the Kilkenny Farm West, because the Tierneys have a proven track record, and it's easy for people to come in and say they're going to do this and that, developers. And I've seen a few other little developments that have gone on in the Waunakee area, not nearly as impressed the way Don has developed his. So with that, I'm going to close and just support the Kilkenny Farm West TIF.
All right. Thank you, Mike. Any others?
I'd like to make a public comment. It has nothing to do with TID or TIF, actually. I didn't get to share this last time because I was in such a rush. We actually received from the Art House preschool kids put this together since the village did pass the resolution for funding childcare. We received a copy of this, We received one of these along with Alex Torres and the Lieutenant Governor as well, Sarah Rodriguez. So just wanted to share it with everybody that, our contributions were noticed. They continue to advocate, as they will, for childcare. And they all had nice shirts on that say no childcare, no workforce. So wanted to make sure this was shared with the boards. Feel free, I think the kids, I think that's the actual kids' handprints. I don't think they came that way. And yeah, just wanted to share it with everybody.
Thank you.
Yep.
That was really nice.
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah. Any other public comments?
I would say something as well, also not TIF related. There is a shred event at the Public Works Building on Thursday from 4 to 6. I think it's out there, but just a reminder, if you've accumulated things that need to be shredded, it's a great place to get rid of it.
Right. Thank you. All right. Any other public comments? All right. Seeing none, we will close the public comments at 6:32 and move on to the consent agenda. Does anyone have anything they would like pulled from the consent agenda? All right. If not, do we have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
Motion to approve consent agenda.
Second.
All right. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Consent agenda passes. Next up is reports, and I've got the first two reports. Let's cover Waun-a-Boom first. Waun-a-Boom committee met 2 weeks ago, the night that we had tornado warning. So we briefly met at the village and then disbanded and went home to our basements and got back together on Zoom. We reviewed the site plan, the schedule, the children's and teenager events, and then spent a lot of time reviewing cleanup and garbage management, as that's always a big portion of the event. We are scheduled to start at 2:30 on the 4th of July with fireworks beginning at 9:45. All activities except for food and beverage are free, so please come on out and join us on the 4th of July and enjoy what is going to be a wonderful event. Second report I have tonight is Utilities Committee. The Utilities Committee met. We approved a meeting change. The June meeting will be on June 17th to accommodate some scheduling changes. So make a note of that if you're planning on coming to the Utilities meeting. We reviewed the utility plan for Kilkenny West. We viewed a new security system for the well buildings. We reviewed construction projects across the village and discussed the problems of arborvitae trees, squirrels, and power lines with relation to keeping power going for a lot of our residents. We discussed the recent storms, the brief power outage during the storms. We reviewed financial statements. We recognized John Russler for 30 years of service on the Utilities Commission, which is outstanding. And then we reviewed the water quality report and discussed the shutdown of well 2, which is going to be something we'll talk about later on in the agenda today. So with that, Nyla.
Sustainable Waunakee Ad Hoc Committee. We meet the third Wednesday of every month at the library. With Kristen's direction, we began organizing to determine needs for the committee, whether to work with a consulting firm, other resources, models from other communities. We may do a mixture of all of the above. Great discussion pertaining to possible sustainable projects, both large and small. And we are also compiling a list of heating, cooling, emergency shelters for the summer to help those who need to use those facilities. So that's it.
All right, thank you, Nyla.
One other thing, while I have a little bit of a voice here, I would like to thank the American Legion for sponsoring and doing the teen dance at Waun-a-Fest. It's very important that we have our teenagers involved in activities, and this will be one way of promoting something for them. Thank you.
All right. Other committee reports.
Yeah, I'll just add, we've seen it, but the community has not heard this publicly yet. As many folks know, we're going to be doing a pavement rehabilitation project on Division Street next year from the railroad tracks up to Main Street. It's about a $560,000 project. And just before our last meeting, we learned that Bill's department applied for 50% reimbursement grant from the state for that project. And we were one of 41 projects statewide to receive that funding. So very much thank you, Bill, Aaron, Tracy, and everybody in your department for the work you do on a daily basis. And I'd also like to note we broke ground on our splash pad this past Tuesday. The capital campaign for that continues. We've raised about $200,000 for that, and we appreciate everybody's support of that project.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Any other committee reports? None? All right. Thank you all very much. Next item on the agenda then is business item number 1, page 37 of your agenda packet. Discuss and take action on resolution renewing the alcohol beverage retail licenses for the 2024-2025 period. Carla.
And this is my item. And every year we approve all establishments that have liquor licenses. And this happens to be the time of year for the July 1, 2024 to June 30th, 2025 period. So we, instead of us including all of the applications and redacting information, we decided to do it by resolution. So I thought it was a little more condensed and easier for you to see what licenses are being applied for. So I'd look for if anybody has any questions, otherwise approval of the established licenses.
Right, do we have any questions?
Just I guess to make sure it's clear, if the PD had any concern about anything that's been brought forth and considered and.
Correct. We will not be, even if they're granted, if there's a missing piece or a missing signature of any sorts, we won't be issuing the license until it's complete.
Nyla?
I have a question. On page 38, there is one combination Class B license for a business that no longer exists, from what I understand. So then what happens to that? I mean, I know it won't be issued, but I'm wondering then what happens with that license?
That's a reserve license, so that'll just go back into our pool of licenses
Okay,
for
thank
another
you.
establishment to take on.
Right, Robert?
I just wanted to thank you and the rest involved in condensing this down into one resolution, since before we had the comically large list, and this is really great. And I'm glad that we could do it this way.
Perfect.
Aaron?
I just was going to ask if you knew how many reserve licenses we had left and if we're in any sort of warning of running low.
I don't know the exact number, but as of last year, prior to our increase, we were at 19 reserve licenses. So, and that were available, and we've only, and I think there's only 4 that are being issued.
All right, Sam?
No other than kudos for the condensed formatting, much less scrolling this year.
I'm glad everybody likes it.
Yeah.
And Tricia?
Nope, ditto that.
All right, so seeing no other questions or comments, do we have a motion?
Sure, I'll move to approve the resolution that the Village of Waunakee approve the renewal of applications for liquor and fermented malt beverage license for July 1st, 2024 to June 30th, 2025, upon meeting all contingencies.
Second.
All right, any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Next item on the agenda, page 39, discuss and take action on resolution renewing the cigarette, tobacco, and electronic vaping device retail licenses for the 2024 to 2025 period.
So this is a little bit of a change from previous establishments that had tobacco licenses were just approved by the clerk's department in the past. Now the law has changed where they need to come before the governing body. So they are being treated the same way as alcohol licenses, where they have to have background checks, an agent, and individual questionnaires done for each individual license. So it's the same thing as the alcohol, except for we're bringing it forward in a resolution form. Same thing goes to the PD for background checks and approvals.
All right, so questions. Sam, any questions? Aaron? Tricia? Joe?
More of a comment there. I know there's been, I guess, some contention over signage and things in some of these locations. This obviously does not address any of that signage. That's a separate issue, correct?
Correct.
Excellent.
Tricia? Good. Nyla? Robert? No, all right. Seeing no further questions, do we have a motion?
I'll move to approve the resolution that the Village of Waunakee approves renewal of applications for cigarette, tobacco, and electronic vaping device retail licenses for July 1st, 2024 through June 30th, 2025 upon meeting all contingencies.
I'll second that.
All right, any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Next item on the agenda, discuss and take resolution or discuss and take action on resolution awarding the sale of 9,040,000 general obligations promissory notes series 2024A. And Todd, I believe this is to you.
Thank you.
Let me share my screen.
Okay, it's
so
got
we
a
can get
brief
some
slide deck.
slides.
And I had mentioned too, did these get distributed, Renee?
Yes.
So you've got a copy of our full report. I'm just going to provide a high level summary, but you can refer to this for further information. So we did receive bids for the sale of your notes at 10:30 this morning. We received in total of 4 bids. They're rank ordered from best bid to worst. So the winning bidder was Northland Securities out of Minneapolis. We award the bid on the basis of true interest costs, which is a combination of the interest you will pay, also what's called the underwriting discount, which I'll mention in a minute, and then all adjusted for the time value of money. So the true interest cost on the winning bid was just a shade over 4%. The numbers that I presented a month ago, we had made an assumption that it would be 3.95%. So we ended up about 1/10 of 1% over our estimate based on where the market was today. You authorized last month offering of 9,180,000 in notes, and that's what I'm sorry, 9,040,000, the bottom number for the issuance of the notes. You'll notice that the resolution that was sent this afternoon, the updated one, is for 8,925,000. So what typically happens is we will receive what's called a reoffering premium, which is simply a way of saying that the purchasing underwriter is going to offer these for resale on the secondary market with an interest rate that's higher than market. And in those cases, what happens is the investor pays more than the face value of the bond. And then you receive essentially those funds as a credit to the transaction. So if you look at reoffering premium and deposit to debt service, that reoffering premium was $276,274. There is a state statute that requires that a portion of that be set aside into your debt service fund and be used to make interest payment on the notes. That's the 168, but the differential between those two, we're allowed to reduce the issue size. So there are a couple other minor variances, but the big one was that reoffering premium. And what that allows us to do is reduce the amount of notes you're issuing today from 9,040,000 to 8,925,000, a $115,000 reduction. But you'll notice that the important part is that the amount that you receive for the project stays the same, actually goes up just slightly. So you're still getting the money you need for the projects. We're just issuing less notes to accomplish that. We looked at this exhibit last month, and I've populated that now with the actual debt service payment in the center. And what we had talked about last month is we've deliberately structured, and in this case today, restructured this debt to cause the debt levy to go up roughly 100,000 for each of the next 2 budget years. And the reason we did that is if we look at your longer term capital plan, it takes about $100,000 per year in order to support that. So we're building that in. And then you'll notice that in the year 27, and I'm looking at the numbers in the red bubble, the debt levy falls from 2.78 million to 2.4 million. But what will happen is when we're back here 2 years from now, we'll have another note issue that will layer that in. So what we're trying to do is over time to build a nice smooth increase in that debt levy. The other data point on here I would mention is in the far right. I am showing what I presented last month. And so when we look at the interest rates you actually received, we look at the premium, the reduction in the note size, it shakes out to be about 137,000 more than the pre-sale estimate. And again, that's that 1/10 of 1% differential. It equates, to roughly $8,000 to $10,000 per year on an annual basis. Other thing I would just mention quickly is we went through the rating process. Anytime we go to market, we have a conversation with Moody's. This time around, they did what we simply call a press release, since they did a full credit opinion last fall. You'll remember when we looked at the financial management plan, we talked a little bit about that. That's when the sewer rating got an upgrade. So they didn't publish a full credit opinion. So this is the rationale from that press release, which a copy of is included in the sale report. And I just highlighted a couple of the notable items. So obviously the ties to the local economy here in terms of Madison being a hub as a driver, your ongoing tax base support and value per capita,
fact that you're maintaining healthy reserves. And again, we share information like that capital improvement plan with Moody's, and they've acknowledged that given that planning, given what you're looking at funding over the future, your budgetary practices, they believe that your long-term liabilities will remain moderate, which is credit positive. And they pretty much tell you, if you do this, good things could happen. And if you do this, bad things could happen. So in terms of what could lead to an upgrade of the village's rating, continued economic growth without spending down your reserves, and keeping those long-term liabilities, which is generally debt, but also includes pension, around 150% ratio of the amount of those liabilities compared to your annual revenues. You're at about 180% with this issue. So again, this first is what could improve your rating. So they're saying if you borrowed a little bit lead over the future, you keep the reserves, you continue to grow, you could see an increase in that bond rating. What could lead to a downgrade, spending down the fund balance, particularly below 35%. And if you were to go wild and double the amount of borrowing that you did going forward, that would be negative from a credit perspective. And lastly,
Can
I
I just say one thing about, it looks confusing that deterioration of fund balance below 35%, since our formula looks at that we want to maintain it between 20 and 25%, but they add in a different piece to their
they're
calculation.
looking at both governmental and enterprise funds. So they look holistically at all of your financial operations. So that's not, it's a good point. That's not specific to your general fund balance.
I just wanted to clarify that.
Thank you. And lastly, I'll just share the scorecard. This would have been from last fall's credit report, and they apply methodology to various metrics. It's very much an analytical process. They look at your last audited financial results, they put it through their system. They can make some subjective adjustments, but largely it's driven by the numbers. And if you look at that far right-hand column, on all but two of the metrics, you actually score in the AAA range. The actual rating is AA2. Institutional framework's a AA. That basically is the state statute and the financing that you are required to operate under by state law. And we are a AA in Wisconsin because we have levy limits. And the other is, again, the long-term liabilities ratio, AA, very solid. But, AAA communities generally have very little to no debt. But, all in all, Village from Moody's standpoint is very solid. And again, you received an affirmation of your AA2 credit with probably more indications of future upward movement than it going the other way. So I'm happy to answer any questions. Otherwise, approving the resolution in the reduced par amount, not the amount listed on the agenda, would have the effect of awarding the notes.
All right. Thank you very much. What questions do we have? Nyla? None? Robert? None? Tricia?
No, thank you for the presentation explanation.
Joe?
Nothing, very thorough.
All right, Sam? None? Aaron?
No, thank you, Deb.
Not any questions here either. All right, do we have a motion then?
I'll motion to approve the resolution awarding the sale of $8,925,000 general dollars in general obligation promissory notes series 2, 2024A.
I'll second it.
Not like that.
All right. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. All right, next up then is item number 4. Discuss and take action on a certified survey map, public improvements agreement and easement release related to the construction of a new middle school at 501 South Street. And this is page 69 of your packet if you're following along. My one reflex.
My name is on here as presenter, but this predates me a little bit. So if Brian, could you cover this
Yes.
one, please?
So this relates to the new school district, the new building that the school district is going to be constructing. And so there's been a lot of discussions with the school district as part of this, because there's certain public improvements that they are doing. And then there's other public improvements that I think the village was already going to do, and we're coordinating. And so that's what the public improvements agreement relates to. And it's our standard public improvements agreement. It's just going to apply to the school district as opposed to a developer. As a result of this, as we're scrambling here a little bit because I don't see the certified survey map in the packet. It was something that was approved by the plan, or recommended for approval by the Plan Commission back in its November meeting. It was standard certified survey map, and there's nothing fancy about it. It's just essentially what they've done, and it's really helpful. Where the school district land is located now, there's 14 different parcels, which makes it very confusing from the standpoint of easements and things of that nature. And so you're effectively taking 14 separate parcels and combining them into one lot. As a result of that, we are getting new easements, public utility easements placed on the CSM, which means then that there's certain public easements that we have right now that we're going to be able to release, in part because of the location of the new building. And I should say that the site plan for the school district was also approved by the Plan Commission back in November. So that's the reason for the releasing the easements. We don't need them anymore because they're going to be placed on the CSM. So I guess we have a bit, I mean, I do believe that you can move forward. I mean, if you want to see the CSM, then we would delay this action and we would bring it back to you at the next meeting. There's nothing fancy about it. It's technical. Like I said, you're taking 14 parcels, you're putting them into one lot, and then you're identifying the different easements. But I could certainly, so I think you have the flexibility to move forward tonight if you want to. But I certainly understand that since the CSM is not in the packet, if you would feel more comfortable waiting. I don't know what impact that would have on the public construction, and I'm not sure. I'm putting Bill on the spot now, and so I'm not sure what impact that would have. But I guess that's the easiest way that I can say it to you, is you have the flexibility to do either tonight.
Page 91 is not the CSM, but it does describe what is generally happening.
Sure, yeah, so let me just get to page 91. So page 91 is, well, effectively what that's doing is, so page 90 of the document is the release. And so what we're releasing is 2 easements, one of which is a recorded with the Dane County Register of Deeds office. And so it's easily to reference that in the first paragraph. The other one was an easement that was not recorded. So the purpose of page 91 is that red line is something that Stranded put together, and we're releasing the easement that exists there. And as you can see, it would be running through where the proposed middle school is, which is why we don't want to have an easement there, because we typically would never want to have a building over our easements. Yeah, this is the CSM that was approved by the Plan Commission. And so again, you know, it's up to you all as to how you want to proceed.
All right, let's open it up for questions. I think those of us on the Plan Commission have seen this before and approved it already. So let's start. Robert, do you have questions, or what questions do you have?
I don't have questions this time, I don't think. I remember attending that Plan Commission and watching, so no real concern here.
Nyla?
No, I don't have any concern. That's gone through planning commission. It should be all right, guess.
All right, Erin?
No questions, but I think it's great that it'll be 1 lot versus 14.
Yes, absolutely.
Sam?
Yeah, I have no concerns with it. Obviously, a CSM is a minor technical document. This is legacy from the 1950s when part of this was actually platted for residential. Frankly, it should have been taken care of decades ago anyway, regardless of whether a school is being built or not. So no problems.
All right. All right, questions. Joe, do you have any?
And more of a, I guess, process type question. In the absence of the CSM actually being in here, can we amend the motion to, I guess,
Yeah, I can
say that
work on that.
yeah, that it's the same as what was passed by the Plan Commission?
So how about this? Motion to approve the public improvements agreement and easement release documents, and motion to approve the certified survey map approved by the Plan Commission with the conditions identified by the Plan Commission.
That would seem good.
I'll make that motion.
And I will,
I'm sorry.
Oh,
I didn't
have-
mean
yeah,
to
that's
interrupt
weird. Okay.
everyone.
and then I'll second it.
Okay.
All right, any discussion on the motion?
It seems,
Pardon?
I was just gonna say, it seems fitting that there's 14 lots and some technical things based off all the additions to the school itself. Like, it seems very
Yes.
fitting.
Yeah,
It's exciting.
It is. It's nice to see this happen. All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. All right, next item on the agenda then, discuss and take action on master agreement for professional services and project supplement with Ayers Associates Incorporated for consulting services for Waun-a-Clean property.
I'll take that, Kristen. And we have Logan Siepel here from Ayers Associates. He's joining us. He's one of the hydrologists with Ayers. And Tim Herlitzka is here from Waunakee Utilities, and Tim and I may tag team or certainly be able to answer questions. At the prior utility commission meeting, there was discussion, a good deal of discussion about recent impacts on well number 2 and contaminants called PCE that have been identified in the well since early 2018 and slowly increasing in quantities. Not to the level where the DNR required action of the village, but to a level that where the Waunakee Utilities and the Utility Commission decided to take that well offline. So that action, or there was more discussion last week with the Utility Commission about that action, and they're in contract with Ayers and Associates now to assist them with that PCE contamination and well issues. So amidst this discovery with the well, there's also a known issue that I want to be really clear. We cannot directly prove or link as a connection to the issues related to well 2, but certainly we're talking about the same types of chemical. And that relates to a property on Klein Drive that used to be Waun-a-Clean. So right now there is the DNR has identified that as a contaminated site and are in the midst of process to work with the property owners to address the contamination and have them do the things and perform functions that they would that they require. So we're aware of that ongoing activity right now. Now there's opportunities in cases where there's contaminated site, and the village has great experience with that, with the former library, former alloy, the cannery. So we've seen these circumstances before, and in those cases, we've partnered with really bright people in the realm of environmental engineering to help us work through those things, as well as to find funding where a public entity is able to harness federal and state programs where private properties are not. So what we're doing with this request to enter into services agreement with Ayers and Associates is to have them come alongside of us in preparation for what we expect will be opportunity for local government involvement and engagement as we see steps being taken with the DNR and the owner of the Waun-a-Clean site. So we're asking you to approve this engagement, then the village staff can start working closely with Ayers and be prepared to work carefully and closely with all those partners and agencies. To be clear, the detected contamination is PCEs, PCE chemicals, which are related to one of the uses is in dry cleaning functions. That is the same chemical detected in the well 2 contamination. But again, to reiterate, we cannot prove direct link between the Waun-a-Clean site and the well site today. So we're looking at those separately, but Ayers would be the right party to assist us as we step forward.
Thank you, Todd. Tim, did you have anything you'd like to add? All right, thank you. And so questions, Sam, what questions do you have?
I don't have any. Obviously, we need to clean this up. I assume we don't have any other sites that we know of with contaminants anywhere in the village that we're aware of.
Well, this is the only site that has been brought to our attention.
Because we've cleaned most of the others up by this point.
There's other identified properties that the DNR has a watchful eye on, but none that are at this point in a process where they're working that closely with the property owner, doing test wells, monitoring air circulation. So this is certainly and it's no secret, the DNR watches former dry cleaning sites across the state very carefully. This isn't an unusual circumstance, a manageable one, but takes great care to do so.
Tricia.
No, I think this is a good plan, Todd, Tim, that you guys have put together.
Nyla?
I agree. It sounds like a good plan and we should start as soon as possible.
Erin?
Yeah, contamination is definitely unfortunate. I guess my biggest question is just, does this allow involvement for the surrounding properties to see if they're also affected through that scope or?
Yeah. My understanding and I'm definitely not the expert, and Logan, I might actually end up calling in Logan, but the record, the DNR's record on the review they've completed on this property to date, and every letter to every person they've sent to date, and the contamination levels are all recorded and publicly available on the DNR website. I do recall seeing where the DNR results have demonstrated, it's called a plume where the chemicals move underground in the groundwater, where it spanned past the proper boundaries of that piece of property. So I know that there's also notification requirements where the DNR has responsibilities to notify owners. And I believe, and I'll call on Logan and maybe Tim also to help me explain what we know about the DNR's prior activity related to the property. Can anyone help?
Yeah,
Logan?
I can jump in. Can everybody hear me okay?
You can.
Perfect. Okay. So yes, a little background. That site is currently in, it's considered an open investigation, right? The investigation is ongoing. So they were doing groundwater, soil, and soil vapor investigation. The former owner, I should say, that the environmentally responsible party has issued notifications to adjacent property owners that there is groundwater contamination that has spread, right? And as far as soil vapor concerns or soil vapor intrusion, the DNR is not overly concerned with adjacent residences being potentially impacted by soil vapor intrusion, or I should say vapors from the release, coming up through the soils and getting into those businesses or homes. They have suggested that, additional testing wouldn't be a bad thing to be done. Nothing's been done in a few years on this property. But I don't really think that they are concerned about it, what I would call an imminent risk to adjacent property owners for health and safety standpoint.
Yeah, I guess my question is more like, does this agreement and like the village's now involvement extend beyond that parcel? Like, do we just need to make sure, like contaminants don't care about a lot line? Like, I just want to make sure we're giving the same consideration to those surrounding properties if they are of concern and making sure that's most up to date.
So Logan, that question I think would be to you to whether the work that Ayers does on the village's behalf as we move along in a process here, that you don't terminate your work at the boundary line of the Waunakee.
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. No, we've looked at this plume and the contamination, residual contamination holistically, and we've looked at where it's spread to that we know of, where it could be spreading to, and have reiterated or iterated our concerns to DNR if there is any, and we'll continue to do so. No, we won't just look at this at property boundaries and stop outside of there. So lot to it. But yes, we're worried about everybody. How's that?
Awesome. Thank you.
I know too that the questions from the public, I think are something we can expect, and the village is prepared in the next couple of days to have a factual statement released with some FAQs, and our communications manager is going to be the point person for receiving questions from the public and then getting them to the right person for answers, which probably most of the time won't be us, but might be someone positioned in a state agency to help with answers. Yep.
All right. Joe.
There's probably a simple answer to this, but when I look on Access Dane, that property is still owned by Summit, but on the master agreement and subsequent things, it does say Village of Waunakee owner, so,
The owner references the party in the agreement with Ayers. We're the owner
Okay.
party
so
in that
not
agreement,
the
not the
actual
owner. of the
property
park.
owner.
Right.
Perfect, thank you.
Robert.
So this has obviously been allegedly releasing chemical PCE for a few years. Where's DNR in this that they didn't realize? I mean, it made it pretty far. It made it to a well that's quite a distance away from the the alleged site. Is there, is the DNR taking any ownership of not alerting us to that we ended up finding it ourselves? Because you said that they monitor these sites and it sounds like they kind of missed this one.
Well, we definitely have to be careful to say that it has made its way to the well. That can't be, we cannot confirm that.
Okay, if
So I
we
just
do,
wanna
let's
be-
say this study confirms that it was from them. I mean, do we have any recourse with the DNR? Are they the responsible party for making sure that anybody in the state of Wisconsin that's, potentially releasing harmful chemicals, like, are they the watchdog for that? It's not our responsibility as a municipality.
Yeah, good question. I'm gonna turn to Logan and ask that he answer that, but also Logan, if reference the timing, when do we know the DNR record? When did the DNR record start on this property?
Sure. So this property, they were operating as a dry cleaner, I think since about early 2000s, maybe late 90s. And they went solvent around 2009, 2010, somewhere in there. And then contamination was detected at the property in 2013. And then there have been subsequent investigations by multiple consultants into the contamination. And there is, without a doubt, contamination of PCE at that property in very high levels, in the soil, in the groundwater, and in the soil vapor. Since that time, or since that release was discovered in 2013, a notification was issued to the DNR, and then the DNR will, yes, they are essentially the regulatory body for responsible parties, the owners of the contamination, to investigate, potentially remediate, and close out a site. So the DNR has been monitoring this, communicating with the responsible party for some time, and, I would say guiding them towards investigating, cleaning up, and closure. Now, this site is still in the investigation process. They have not fully defined the extent of contamination at the site. And it has stalled out. In 2021 was kind of the last piece of investigation data that's available online. And I don't think anything else has been submitted by the responsible party to the DNR since. So that's kind of a background. There's plenty going on there. Todd, does that, anything
Well, I
else I
think
can
the other-
add to that?
Yeah, I think the other part of Robert's question is, or comment is, gee, it would have been nice maybe if the village had been keenly aware of this circumstance sooner, and maybe we could have, action could have been taken in partnership with others. Would that have been a possibility in this case, Logan? Is there?
Yeah, for
anything
sure.
else
The
we should have-
DNR, as you mentioned before, they keep a very close eye on certain sites. Dry cleaners are one in particular. Any sites with solvents or, these chemicals of concern that are more, I'll use the word toxic than others, right? And this is one particular site that, in my mind, definitely should have had a lot more eyes on it at DNR and should have been raising more concerns. And I think I think it's just fallen by the wayside, and that's very common in when the instance where you have somebody who is a responsible party is supposed to be cleaning something up or investigating it. It costs money, it costs time, and they don't want to do that, right? And so if they're not actively engaged, the DNR is often, they will respond with letters, they'll make phone calls, but it's not very often that it goes to enforcement action and things really ratchet up until you have a major problem.
I'll share, so you know that you heard some comments that, make you ask questions, put question marks up in the air. We have Brian's firm, Sanford Rosenbaum, does have an attorney who specializes in environmental law. The village is already engaged in consultation with her, and she's been participating with us in our conversations with the DNR.
And just, I feel like we're kind of dancing around. When we say responsible party, we're talking Summit Credit Union is the current owner.
In this case, yes, they are the responsible party. They are the property owner. They are not the ones that caused the release, but in Wisconsin, if you own a property with contamination on it, you are considered a responsible party, even if you didn't make that initial release.
All right. Thank you, Logan.
Yep.
Other questions?
Yeah, one more.
Yes, go ahead.
We're obviously right at that $25,000 mark. What's the,
But you don't, the statute relates to public construction. It
Ah,
does not relate
perfect.
to services.
that's perfect. Thank you.
All right, I will say I've sat in on the meetings with the DNR and with Ayers and our attorneys and our village staff. And the advice we're giving, I think we're getting is very good. I think we've been on the case since we learned of this. And Tim, I don't know if you want to speak to the testing at all and what's going on at utilities, but you've been very responsive and very quick to take action.
Yeah, we've been
Hook up to the, yeah.
And to be clear, the questions for Tim relate to a well issue that we are not in our statements here connecting
Yes.
to the issue that's on your agenda.
Thank you for
Bill
bringing
for
that up.
being the PR or the sound guy over here. But yeah, so we've been monitoring the increasing levels in the PCE since I believe it started in April of 2018. The levels have been rising very slightly. And we have, out of an abundance of caution, decided to we recommended to the Utility Commission that the commission authorize taking the well offline. The levels on average are still below what's called the MCL, the maximum contaminant level that's prescribed by the DNR. And we just felt as we kept tracking the increased levels that it would be best for the utility and the customers, that the customers know that the water is safe and that we aren't at the level where the DNR would make us provide treatment to the well. So again, to be proactive, so customers know that the water is safe, we took the proactive approach of temporarily or permanently suspending operations at the well. We did a couple things along the way. We thought if we dialed back the pumpage level, that would make the problem easier, or the levels of the PCE would be less. It had the opposite effect. And so then we dialed it way down to, I think, 400 gallons per minute, where it had been, I think, 700 or 900 gallons per minute. And it spiked. We went back down to, or we pumped it back up, or turned it back up toward the normal levels, and the levels came back down below the MCL. So again, out of an abundance of caution, and so the public knows that the drinking water is safe, we decided to take this proactive approach. As it relates to the well, we had originally planned to have what would be our well number 6. We plan to have that installed about 10 years from now. Instead, we are hopefully going to move well number 6 forward here. We started the preliminary engineering on that. Did that answer your question?
It does. Thank you, Tim. Thank you very much. But again, as Todd said, we don't have a definitive link between the two. So thank you, Nyla.
Tim, thank you, and Public Utilities and the Utility Board, thank you for being proactive on this, because I don't know, from what I've heard on the news, et cetera, not all communities are proactive, and then things really snowball. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you for saying that. And one other thing I'd really like to add real quick is that we have a total of 5 wells right now. We've had no detects in any of the other wells.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Tim. All right, any other further questions? If none, I'd like to move to approve the master agreement for professional service and individual project supplement with Ayers Associates Incorporated for consulting services for Waun-a-Clean property, and to authorize the village administrator to execute those agreements.
I'll second it.
Any discussion on the motion? See none. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. All right, thank you all very much. Next item on the agenda, discuss and take action on scope of work for MSA Professional Services for a County Highway Q Century Avenue corridor study.
I'm gonna share my screen here. When I got a copy, I printed off copies of these slides. I printed off hard copies for these slides so you can have in front of you, refer back through those. Thank you, Lauren. So I'm actually going to kind of couple my comments, because there's intertwined, there's the intertwining of this scope of work and how it relates to the next two items on your agenda. So I'm sort of going to lay out the complete presentation here now for all three in front of us, and then we'll circle back as needed. The first part of the slides here are identical to what you saw 2 weeks ago. Nothing has, there's nothing changed in the item coming up related to the development agreement from what you saw 2 weeks ago. So this, let me go to presentation style. Great. This will look very familiar. I started to talk about the parameters of the development agreement, and I talked about the two key pieces of the development agreement. What's going to be done, and how are they going to be paid for? So I reviewed that scope again. Identical slides. This laid out the total project cost for those public improvements, about a $5 million total cost for that area in the amended TID boundary. Then I reviewed the sources and the $2.8 million in reimbursement that would be paid to the developer. The terms here are the same again as you saw 2 weeks ago. Again, a reminder that the funding source is cash balances in TID number 6 as opposed to a MRO, which counts on future development to create additional increment. By the way, Todd Taves is here today in the flesh, and I asked him to stay past his prior item because he's our TIF expert and can help with those questions again if we need to. Okay, I showed the general development plan. I reminded you that the TID boundary is the red and orange parcels in the top right corner of this development area. And then I discussed what I sort of called a window of opportunity, where in discussions with the school district and the developer and village engineering, we recognized the potential to continue a trail network extending, and here you can see extending from this intersection both southward and westward. This is the segment that would be the village's responsibility to complete. This is adjacent to the Miller property. This is outside of the TIF district boundary area. So that would be our segment. The blue line represents the segment that would be completed by the developer as part of their project, which completes this connectivity. So I think my presentation ended there, and the village board had a number of really thoughtful questions. Questions, frankly, that made a whole lot of sense. Like, does the trail, I show this arrow here, does the trail also extend south to connect to Peaceful Valley? Are there crossings going to be included in the intersection of Woodland and Q, where currently there are no crossing markings or push buttons for crossing controls? Really good questions, and I think the next few slides, what I want to do is provide answers to those. They're in the packet in front of you, though, and I'll share that these were contemplated, frankly, months ago. These engineering designs were part of the plan set that the developer completed with their engineers and planners. So I kind of want to dial in there. So here is the intersection of Woodland and Q. And as you can see, this project involves the construction of or installation of pavement markings to identify the crosswalk areas. What I'll add is, in fact, just a conversation earlier today with Steve Summers from the school district. They'd like the village to further work with the district to enhance this intersection to include what I think are called continental crossing markings, which are bolder white stripes to, instead of just the long stripes, bolder white stripes along all of these areas to further identify the crosswalk area. Those are that's something we agree to. That's also something that the school district is willing to support as a funding partner as well, because they have some safe routes programs and funding for those programs that they want to use to enhance crossing areas. The district's plan is to place a crossing guard at this intersection at start of the school year next year. Bill, you're welcome to jump in if I'm missing any item. Oh, this is tough to see. Wonder if I can zoom in. This is from the Veerbecker plan set from the developer. And can I zoom in on that? Not very well. Let me show you that. This is along Woodland Drive, and the developer plan set shows the off. It's really hard to see. I'm following it right on the edge line there. There's a gray path that's shown. I hope that, are you guys seeing that? And then it continues. What I want to demonstrate here is that trail continues south on the west side of Q to an intersection with, what's the name of that new road? Let's see. Yeski. So this next slide, let me go back up here. Remember trail coming south. The next slide is a continuation south. So there's Yeski Drive at the top. What you can see is markings for pedestrian crossings on Yeski and continuation then of that shaded off-road trail network down to Peaceful Valley. And then we have the crossings accommodated here at Peaceful Valley. So I wanted to share with you that those improvements were contemplated are part of the scope of public improvements that the developer intends to install with this project in phase one. With the goal, and I go back to what we called sort of this opportunity, this window of opportunity for a 2024 construction season in which we hope and we believe there's the opportunity to complete that trail segment prior to the start of the, or towards the start of the school district year. I mean, there's moving parts and weather, here we are. Good timing. Weather is a factor and that can play havoc on projects, but we believe that through a combination of the developer's planned project and the schedule that his builder can accommodate, and then the village's engineering. By the way, you approved the Strand task order. They're already cracking on that. I think Bill can attest to the work that Strand has already undertaken for our segment of that trail that we also believe can be prepped for public bidding to also be completed this construction year. I referenced the school district's plans and their attention to safe crossings, safe access for an array of intersections and intersections that either work or don't work in the district. This is a little segment from the plan, and I emailed you all a copy of that full plan this weekend. But this is the improvements related to Heritage Elementary School. One thing I can share with you is that the red area identified to the east of County Q, that indicates that students will be bused to the schools, the Heritage and Intermediate schools from the east side of Q. Busing will be afforded. It doesn't mean that that's the choice that parents or students are going to make in terms of how they get to school. But I did want you to know, and we've confirmed this with Steve Summers, that busing would be afforded at this point in time based on this plan. Which kind of brings me back to this, and I only wanted to clarify that Steve had brought up with staff today a discussion about wanting the enhanced crosswalk markings, again, something the village is able to accomplish. And you'll also see those enhancements completed in other areas around the village at crossings that the study identifies as problematic. So we're already talking to the schools about making further improvements. This would coincide with those. Steve asked me to share with the village board that based on the discussions we had a couple of weeks ago and the potential for that trail connectivity to occur this construction season, that they've already engaged Roxanne Johnson, their civil engineer, to make sure that their plans include the off-road trail along Woodland that abuts their property. I want to zoom in just a little bit, and it gets a little pixelated here, but they're already doing engineering discussion at, where's my cursor? Whoop. Right here. Oh, I see what happens. I go behind this. Okay, let me move that. In this area, there's a few utilities in and around the easement area, like charter cable or maybe some electrical boxes. I'm not exactly sure, but they're already talking about steps that need to be taken for this construction right here to occur at the moment that we also succeed at connecting the trail westward to the edge of the Miller property. With that said, and in relation to some of the comments that the board made about this corridor, the Q corridor from the southern boundary of the village up to Woodland, concerns about safe pedestrian crossings and what are things that we should be doing through that corridor. Staff believes that those are really thoughtful questions that I think are worth doing some deeper dive into. And we've identified in your packet, and that's the item that we're talking about in a moment, is engaging our planners to do what I guess I'm going to call it sort of a micro corridor study to identify some short-term and midterm improvements we could make to the corridor that takes into account a variety of uses that are occurring through this area. We have the commercial uses, we've seen them. There's a small amount of commercial on the flip side with the Kilkenny West development. And then we've got residential on both sides. And then we've got a 4-lane highway running in between those two things that's kind of a wide expanse with not a lot of tree plantings and a different style lighting, and crossings that are long and wide. And it's a reasonable question. Is that the best solution for pedestrian movement? And we've got to have all these uses play really well together. Staff, and even though we have a certified planner on staff, we don't have those answers for you today. But we have a firm in MSA that we partner with when we have complex planning questions to consider. And they've provided us a proposal to begin as a TIF-funded project, a study of this corridor. And with that, I'm gonna take a drink of water and stop talking. And I want to turn it over to Lauren and ask her to outline the scope of this agreement that MSA has proposed. I'll add that, let's see, is Steve still with us?
Yes,
Steve, are you? Okay. Steve is a planner with MSA who put this proposal together, and together Steve and Lauren can present the scope of what's proposed.
Yeah, so first, thanks, Steve, for sticking around up to this point. So as part of this, we were trying to build a scope that takes into account pedestrian movement, bicycle movement, vehicular movement. There's a lot of users in this area, and there's a lot of land uses in this area. And so how can we engage, in this case, the team from MSA, to look at those from a landscape level. So like Todd was talking about, some of those things like lighting, trails, crossings, to traffic engineering, and is the 4-lane highway necessary at this point? Could we maybe change the road profile and accommodate more uses in a way that's also, welcoming to the community? This is basically our southern gateway, where a lot of people are coming in. And so what they came up with is the proposal that's in front of you. The planning and most of the traffic engineering side of that would come to approximately $24,000. After we issued the agenda, we got some more information from the traffic engineers that if we wanted to include a 24-hour speed study and 24-hour traffic counts between Woodland Drive and Meffert Road, that would cost an additional $3,600. So that's what the change in the summary sheet in front of you, that's what that change is that additional $3,600 that staff would recommend we go ahead and undertake, because the DOT doesn't do their own counts there. So when they looked into what's the current traffic count in that area,
we don't have anything to go off of. So in this case, MSA would do those traffic counts for us. And it would also, this is kind of a multi-phase plan. This is the initial planning side of it. The next phase would be to look at what those recommendations are that come out of it, and what projects do we want to undertake based on those recommendations. So I guess I'll open it up to any questions for Steve or me. Unless Steve has anything else to add before we get to questions.
I had one question. Steve, what's the time frame on completion of a scope of work like this?
Sure. Based on the outline of the meetings that we laid out, trying to keep it somewhat minimal, but also get enough feedback from those stakeholders. I would think it's a 6-month process to cover those meetings. If we want to shortchange the meeting outlook there, it could be reduced, but I think that's a fair estimate.
And we did intentionally ask Steve to make sure that what we included in that scope of work was public engagement process that took into account the neighborhood and the different type of uses that are in that area, along with obviously Plan Commission and Village Board involvement.
All right. Robert, I know you met this week to talk about this. This is a big concern of yours. Do you want to start out with questions or comments?
Sure. So I am going to start by stating and recognizing that if not for, I know that there's a lot of people here who think that we're voting on the development, but that was not what the discussion was about. So if not for the fact that we did have a deadlock vote, I don't think we would be having this discussion tonight about this study, to be honest. So here's when that meeting ended, I sat and I sent a very detailed email to Lauren and to Todd and said, we should get to a point where we want to vote yes on this, not, it shouldn't just be because, no offense, but if a fourth trustee shows up to vote, that shouldn't be the deciding factor on an issue. It should be something that we can at least come to some consensus on. So I did meet with Lauren and Todd on this, and they agreed to get this put together. Thank you, Stephen, by the way, for your very fast turnaround with that between Tuesday and Wednesday. I was very happy with what I saw in there, as far as if we're tying this into moving forward with the improvements in the TID, I think that this is something that we could get behind. I will admit 6 months is not incredibly helpful as far as the school opening. As it pertains to this agreement, I am going to say I feel that it's a little bit shameful that we were going to rush through without considering this just because of the safety of children. And what I mean by that is I also met with the school district staff. I met with Steve Summers and with Randy Gutenberg. I extended an invitation to meet with them. I did meet with them last Thursday. And without betraying their trust of what we discussed in there, more or less, I haven't heard one person that said they'd be comfortable letting their child cross queue, even with the improvements that are listed in this agreement. And so it further pushes the fact that we need to have a study on there, because if the primary users and the intent of this improvement is to consider moving children and pedestrians across queue, then it should be done in a way that is meaningful. It should be done in a way that we're thinking about the safety of pedestrians. This is a really weird roadway within the village. I dare you to find something that's exactly similar to this, and you won't find it. It's the only one that's a 4-lane highway and 40 miles an hour. And we expected that if there was a crosswalk in here, a crosswalk that we're not discussing that. That's the next item, so I won't get into that. But the point is that we owe it to our citizens, and we owe it to our children, especially, to do this study. I think that this is a good first step. I'm hopeful, though, as we go through this process, that there's steps that we can take in the interim that don't require waiting for the full 6 months. But that would, I thought that we had discussed that when we were looking at setting this up, of maybe if there's some low-hanging items that come out of it that don't require like the full report to come out for us to say like, hey, that's an easy thing that you should look at doing.
Yeah, or some examples is trees take a while to grow, and there's some like very clear areas, trees within the median or terraces where it's an easy choice, and maybe some initial landscape planning can bring us to a quick decision to do some installation like that. And the other thing is, and I guess maybe that's worth talking about a bit, is it reasonable to think or to consider that the off-street trail system is a good improvement, will be a good improvement regardless. I kind of think it will. And I know we already talked to our engineers about contemplating that now versus future roadway changes, and would that cause us to have to redo something? We want to avoid that circumstance. So I think we'd want to, what else did you have in mind, Robert, in terms of low hanging fruit?
Well, I mean, trees are a good start because natural bollards stop cars. So, I mean, when we talk about planting trees, it sounds morbid to talk about, but when we talk about planting trees near roadways, it's so that if somebody veers off the road, they're gonna hit a tree. It's gonna stop a car pretty quickly. There's plenty of pictures of that out there. And they're much nicer looking and they keep growing and they eventually give a natural canopy to your walkers that are on there because it's gonna be hot walking out there if there's no natural shade covering on there. You know, I'm hesitating on what to talk to because I know that we have a completely different agenda item that discusses the specifics on here. So staying within the scope of the study, I think this study accomplishes what we need. We do need it. I would urge if you have any heartburn about the additional 3,600, we do need a traffic count study if we want to look at adjusting speed limits. It's state statute. So I think it's well worth the money for us to include that in there.
All right, Sam, you made sure everyone got a copy of the school report.
Yeah, I think this is great. I would just add, the presentation that we got, that was printed to us, that was what I needed frankly the last time. Because this is great. I hope with any sort of future requests like this, that we do it this way. You know, I got a lot of phone calls, which was unfortunate, basically alleging that I support kids getting injured by the way I voted the last time. And that's not the case at all. I support keeping our kids safe. And that's what we're doing here with this study. I wanted to make sure that we had the information we needed. Where are kids being bused? All of those different factors, because let's face it, we get enough complaints about people who have problems crossing Main Street. And it is our obligation to take the time to do it right. And that's what we're doing. Brian, as to the question we received pertaining to the $25,000 bidding out, is that required or no? I mean, I'm fine with moving forward on it, but.
No, I mean, there's a state statute that says for public construction work, you have to bid it out if it's over a certain threshold. We have a code that effectively mirrors that, but this is a services agreement. It's not a public construction contract. There's a lot of case law out there that says the public construction bidding laws do not apply to services agreements. So you can move forward. And I would also note, I'm not aware of any language that we have in our code that requires any particular steps to be taken with services agreements.
Thank you.
Nyla, you started out in the sidewalk committee years ago. So what are your thoughts?
Correct. First of all, I'd like to say that I have been in childcare for over 50 years, actually, and safety is always a #1 priority for all of our citizens, but especially for children. I agree that we need a study, but I'm wondering, even though we don't need to take it to bid, I would be more comfortable if we took it to bid, because what I'm wondering is for one thing, this doesn't say how many hours this is going to take. Documents I've looked at for other projects have a little bit more specifications on it. Don't have anything against the MSA, but I would be more comfortable, and I'm willing to support the study. But I'm just questioning why we are not taking it to bid.
Okay. With that, Steve, do you have any feedback that you'd like to give us on number of hours or what went into the cost consideration?
Well, I mean, agreed that typically more detail would be necessary. It was a 24-hour turnaround, so I did have to be kind of ballpark on hours per the scope that was drafted. I could follow up with more information if it's not comfortable to do so today, and I can give example projects and resumes. It was just kind of a basic scope at this time. And so go ahead.
I would give major kudos to Steve because I sent him I sent him a first email around noon, a second email with more information around 3:30, 4 o'clock that afternoon, and he had this to me by 11 o'clock the next morning. So we were really trying to make sure that we had the information necessary to get it on this agenda. And he, having written these before and answering RFPs with proposals, I was really happy with what they were able to turn around in less than 24 hours.
I will say thank you for the quick turnaround. That was very good. Thank you.
All right. Aaron.
Yeah, I was excited to see this on our agenda, and I wasn't here last time, but I was excited after watching the conversation the next day that this was something brought back and of actual importance in my brain, and I think it's very important to me. I think pedestrians should be at the top of the transportation pyramid. Like their safety, it should be the preferred method if possible to be moving like on pedestrian pathways. And that's on us and that's on other leaders in our community to create that as the preferred method and give like dignity to our pedestrian areas. I think talking about this segment, talking about the perpendicular trail, it's these little connecting areas that can just be so truly like life-changing for someone's like daily routine or how they get around or have a sense of place with where they live and work. And this is going to become even more important area of our community as the future unfolds. And I think, I mean, I'm excited about the study. I'm in support of it. I almost wish that we were doing this on a broader scale around town so that we're doing it like the same process in other places that are just as important. I really hope here that as things develop on the other side too, that it's not scary or let's get in our car and drive across the street just to get to that store, to get to my friend's house. This weekend was in a similar or a neighboring community and it was so unsafe to get across a road very similar to this. And it's just like so unfortunate that we're driving half a mile because it's the safest route. So, sorry, a lot of personal, pedestrians are very important. And that's, I think, on us as leaders in our other areas of our community that like, we shouldn't then have to, oh yeah, pedestrians are important. So I think just like, as we keep going with things, this should be something like, I hope we have a plan for so that it's as we're making road changes or like, this is, oh, we really, 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 this is important to us. So, yeah, I think it's great. If we can duplicate this process other places in town too. So.
Well, I'll give you just one bit of good news to that point, because I think we'll all have that opportunity. Just today, Laura and I were laying out what she'll be talking to the Plan Commission about, which is the schedule for our comp plan update. And we can be very diligent and specific in certain areas of the village through a comprehensive planning process and go more in depth than just talking land uses. You can start to really hone in on improvements that you want to make a priority. So I see in the next, it's about a two-year process, right, Lauren, to complete one, but I see that opportunity coming up for you.
Exciting, huh? Yeah, Trisha.
A couple different things. I agree this is a very good step. In addition, we've talked a lot about state safety. I think the other two big pieces are with just the gateway of this coming into Waunakee, and as we're looking at how we can refine and improve and add the pedestrian access elements to it. I think it's a great opportunity to do that, not only benefiting the residential areas around there, but also the businesses that have invested in that area. And, with even like doing the traffic study, that's data that'll be helpful for Don and the other landowners that have parcels left to put additional retail or amenities in. So kind of having that full picture in that area, I think is a great idea, a great time. So thanks for pulling it all together. And I'm not concerned about the not having a competitive bid on this one. It's a small enough contract. And I think you guys kind of do enough for these where really what the ballpark usually is for something like this. So I'm comfortable with that.
All right. Thank you, Trisha. Joe.
I think this is pretty much a slam dunk. I wish this had been something that we had earlier on. So as additional development happens in the future, maybe some of this would be good to consider. But otherwise, based on how we got here, it would have been nice to have it up front, but it's good to have it now. So I support it.
Great. Yes.
I think it's very important that we always look into this type of information because we do not ever want to cut one community off from another. And if you have a road that the traffic is so heavy and you don't have pedestrian crossings, bike crossings, it makes it impossible for that neighborhood to remain part of the community.
Excellent. I want to thank everybody that put this together and brought it to attention, put it together in a short timeline, got the bid together and got it in the packet by Wednesday. That's an amazing feat in and of itself. So thank you guys all very much. Any other questions? If there are no other questions, do we have a motion?
I'll move to approve approve a $27,600 lump sum project cost to MSA Professional Services for a County Highway Q South Century Avenue corridor study and authorize village administrator to execute the agreement.
I'll second it.
Question now?
Yes. What about 24-hour traffic counts between Woodland Drive and Medford Road?
That includes that number. That's why we did 27.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? All right, seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. All right,
Thank you,
next.
Steve.
Pardon?
I just
Thank
thank
you,
Steve for joining
Yeah,
us today. Yep.
Thank you. Next item, page 110, discuss and take action on reconsideration of motion at May 20th, 24 board meeting related to public improvements agreement, the TIF agreement for Kilkenny Farms West related to tax incremental District 6. And this is coming forward at my request. I would like us to reconsider this. So I will make a motion.
Can-
Go ahead.
Just-
I'm sorry, Brian. I'm getting ahead
If
of
a
myself.
motion is gonna be made, I just wanted to tweak it. It would be move for reconsideration of the decision made at the May 20th, 2024 board meeting, and then just go on with the rest of what you have there. It's just a little bit of a tweak.
Okay. Move for reconsideration of the decision made at the May 20th, 24 board meeting related to public improvements agreement, TIF agreement for Kilkenny Farms West related to tax increment District 6.
I'll second that.
All right, do we have any discussion on the motion? All right, Sina, do we need to do a roll call vote for this one, Brian?
That's up to you. I mean, the last time this is a very unique ordinance. We did do a roll call vote the last time or the one other time that I'm familiar with this, so it wouldn't be a bad idea.
All right, let's do a roll call vote.
And if we're gonna do a roll call vote, I'm gonna be using random.org now to give us a really random.
It also downloaded a random virus on our computer.
That's yours problem, right?
He'll fix it.
I'm just really excited about this, so
It's a little wheel, it spins.
I'm using a different one.
Oh, you already switched.
I already switched. Okay, so Joe Zitzelsberger,
Yes.
Aaron Moran,
Yes.
Sam Kaufman,
Yes.
Nyla Fry,
I abstain.
Trisha Brown,
Yes.
Kristen Rungy,
Yes.
Robert McPherson.
Yes.
All right. So with that, then motion carries. We move on then to the next agenda item, correct, Brian?
Correct.
Okay. So next agenda item, number 8, discuss and take action on public improvements agreement, TIF agreement for Kilkenny Farms West related to tax incremental District 6. And that will be page 112 of your packet. And Todd, you went
Yeah, I kind
over
of went
this
through that.
already. Yeah.
Yeah, and maybe best, if Brian has any other specifics regarding the agreement that's drafted again, no change has been made to what you saw in your packet a couple weeks ago.
That is correct. I mean, you didn't move into closed session during the last meeting. You do still, though, we have it on the agenda. You certainly, if you want to, have the ability to go into closed session to discuss potential terms and conditions. I mean, I'm not advocating for that, but I just want to make sure that you are aware that you have that flexibility if you want to do it. And I'm certainly willing to answer whatever questions you may have about the agreement.
So in addition to you being present, Brian, we also have Todd Taves in case we have questions on TID. And Bill, you also, at the start of this process, did a lot of work with Aaron around the public works schedule. So did you have anything, I didn't call on you last week. Did you have anything you'd want to say about the planning process? Or that this is totally spontaneous. Yeah. Okay. Not you, Aaron, other Aaron, Aaron with an A. Yeah, so. All right, any questions we have? Nyla, any questions?
This is for Todd Paynes. How?
Microphone.
Oh, I turned it off now. But thank you. How does this, going ahead with this affect the long-term, proposal of the, or the TID area or the, the projected numbers? Pardon?
The closure?
Yes, the closing date. How does all of this come together in the end?
Off the cuff, my recollection is it was 4 or 5 years additional.
Thank you.
Tricia?
I think I said quite a bit last time. I think this is a great use of the TIF and the fact that it's, this initial piece of it is coming from that cash we already have earned on it. Just makes sense to me. No other questions.
Thank you, Sam.
Much better now that we have the information this time, because it's important that we're able to communicate to the public, all right, we're spending this money. Well, what actually are we getting? And a presentation like this in a visual format makes it very clear as to what we are getting from this. So I appreciate that.
I'm taking notes.
Yeah.
All right, thank you, Sam. Aaron?
I don't have any big questions right now.
Little ones are okay too.
I know. I just didn't know I was next and they're not.
All right, I'll come back then. Joe?
I've got nothing beyond what we discussed last time.
Robert?
So again, I saved some stuff from the last discussion because it was more relevant to this portion of it. So I wanted, so I've discussed this with staff again, and now I can talk about the other half of that discussion. So I want to understand, and I want to make sure I heard this correctly. So when we had originally saw the proposal from and we saw Veer Becker's notes in there, was the cross on the south side of the intersection at Woodland and Q, was that not in the initial, last packet? Was that one that we discovered after the fact that they needed to add in? I'm looking at Bill because I think he may be.
I think, should I bring, is this one of those, should I bring up the slide so we're talking about the right thing? Or that, where you all know?
I'm talking about this one where it was the south.
Yeah, I believe it was the north-south one, because I brought it up as a
Yeah, someone
question.
referenced it. but
That
we
was
didn't have
the
a
one
picture.
that is now in the picture.
It's now in the picture. So
Yes.
so in the original vote that we were considering, sorry, Bill, I didn't even put you on the spot like this.
Yeah, that was part of the original plan. We, that isn't something new that was just added or anything like that.
Okay, so
The only addition I believe though was, you want to talk about the signal?
Yeah, it would just be the actual activation signals for the crosswalk itself, the conduit and everything's in there. But we've since asked for that to be completed when they do this project.
okay, is this presented as final then? It's that is the median on Q, is it really gonna walk in front of a median, or is that gonna become a pedestrian refuge?
We're looking at making that a pedestrian refuge.
Okay.
And also putting the across the school asked for the large block white.
Yeah.
But those are outside.
All walks would be done in the continental style.
Yeah, but just to be clear, those are outside the scope, but that's something that the
That the
village
village
and the
is doing.
school district would be working on. And
Along
my
with the
understanding is
village.
the school district would be funding it, but it's not covered by this agreement.
Correct.
Okay.
Okay, so what is the developer gonna be responsible for in this intersection then?
I believe this intersection, what you see here was the scope of improvements that were included as part of the developer's plan set.
Right.
So if there's enhancements to this that the district requests, perhaps this is going to be a funding partnership as opposed to all district or all developer.
Right.
I'm guessing is what would be.
Correct. I mean, we're just be doing working with the striping, the
Okay.
continental striping.
Okay.
And I believe that
Then
in your notes from Kent, Bill, you mentioned that the enhancements to the signalization, the push button enhancements would
Yep.
be something that would be discussed with the developer regarding elements of the project cost
Okay.
for the developer.
Correct.
Is that correct, Bill?
Correct.
Okay.
Okay, so the TID's gonna pay to the developer to do the signalized portion, the school district's going to pay for, or help fund the stripes,
Marking.
the marking, excuse me. Yeah. Okay. And we are investigating making that a pedestrian refuge instead of it walks in front of the curb.
Yeah, we had some discussion about.
Okay.
And that'd be something, if there is, the low hanging fruit things we talked about with that study. If there's opportunity to maneuver that crosswalk to incorporate the refuge, I'd be interested in that as a potential outcome, and probably a TIF eligible project cost, I would assume, as well, as this is right in that corridor.
Yeah, because contrary to what some people maybe believe when I voted no, it wasn't about spending TIF money. It was, if we're gonna spend TIF money on this, it's gonna be done right for public safety. So I'm all for, if we're gonna use that funds for it, that we should do it right. In fact, I'll use the words that I used with you and Lauren when we were in our meeting. I said, I want it to be the sexiest intersection in Waunakee, which is a really dry statement, but if it's gonna be, a premier area, let's make sure it looks nice. That doesn't need to go in the minutes, clearly.
It's in the video.
It's in the video. Somebody can use that against me later. So, okay. And then when it comes to improvements to Woodland Drive and then I'm not a plan commissioner, so I'm probably stepping outside my boundary here, so I might upset somebody, but when we're talking about improvements, there's a lot of dedicated turn lanes being added in this project and the materials that you provided to us tonight. So I'm looking at, we're gonna make a cut in for a dedicated right turn lane headed southbound on Q. On the west side, there's a dedicated left turn lane into South Holiday Drive from Woodland Drive. These are all things that are gonna increase the size of these roads. Is there any control that we have, since this is going to be funded with TID, into influencing not having that occur that way?
I think we'd have to jump pretty quickly into planning review. I'm guessing that those improvements were promoted in those locations because of the nature of the current roadway. Like it's not that.
Right. Well,
Yeah.
so do you know where I'm going with this? We're gonna pay for a 6-month study, and then we might come to the end of the study and say, oh, that road that you just made all those improvements to,
Yeah.
undo that. Is that something we can stomach?
I guess I don't see it in really increasing the right of way. I thought we had plenty of right of way at the one meeting we had talked about those.
Well, you know what I'd be interested in doing, and I think engaging with the developer and our planning team and sitting down and sort of before a hard shovel goes in the ground in relation to especially the Q corridor portion of this, having a good critical discussion, thoughtful discussion together and see if there's a unique or different approach. I think it's worth having that conversation. I don't know what the best end result really has to be about the timing at which we complete it and it being done in a way that's safe for the movements, for those uses. So, I don't know, I'm kind of spitballing here, except to say that I'm willing to coordinate our team to sit down with the developer and thoughtfully consider alternatives.
And actually too, I mean, Joe, you don't have anything as the designer on those turn lanes.
Turn lanes.
Yeah, come up here. Yeah.
Yeah, make sure you introduce.
Yeah. This is Joe Goldworthy?
Joe Goldsworthy with
With
Beverage.
Becker.
The turn lanes and the configuration of the roadway was based mostly on the traffic impact analysis that was previously completed for this area.
How old is that analysis, do we know?
Was just done last fall, I believe.
Sorry, I don't remember the date.
Okay, so it's recent.
It's,
But
it's a current
that,
study.
so the traffic impact analysis is based off of the current configuration of County Trunk Highway Q?
Correct.
So we're kind of making decisions based off of something here that we just approved to study to say maybe it shouldn't look the way it is. Is that how am I interpreting this correctly?
Yeah, I think so. And is your question about stomaching this, are we comfortable maybe going down a route today with the investment involved, with the possibility, being open-minded to the possibility that those improvements may be modified in the future as another public improvement.
When my further extension question of that is, if we approve this as written tonight, what's our ability to change that in the future?
Well, I mean, anytime we do a public improvements agreement, the plans for the public improvements are always subject to our approval. And that's written into this document. And so, I mean, if something were to come up within the next few weeks where it seems like, hey, this shouldn't be done, then we'd have the ability to staff level to say, well, we need to bring it back to the board. I mean, the only comment I want to make is looking at just in sitting in meetings for a number of years, my understanding is the turn into Kilkenny West off of Q is located where it's located because it's always anticipated that I think Sarah Lane is on the east side, and then you would necessarily have a road that turns into the development on the west side at the same spot.
Like the mirror that you're mirroring.
I mean, I've heard Kent and other folks from Strand talk about that going back.
We're
And
not
I
talking
think-
about the same intersection, by the way. Sarah Lane is further north from this. I'm talking about at Peaceful Valley and Q.
Oh, okay.
Not yes.
Yeah, I think you're looking at Yeski.
Oh, I wasn't sure where, I guess I misinterpreted your comment that. That's where I thought you were talking about the turn lane.
No, I'm talking about the turn lane that's
Oh,
being, it looks
okay.
like it's being added to the road onto Q at Woodland. It looks like we're adding another lane in there to accommodate a turn lane. Because it's in the shaded area, which I assumed meant that it needed to be dug out.
Yeah, I mean,
It's
I
not a
guess-
dedicated right turn lane today because you would go into nothing. It's the funeral home entrance.
Yeah, it's probably a situation where, I think that I mean, now I'm getting out of my skis as not an engineer, but you're right. The road may be getting wider in concrete, whereas right now, the technical road right away on the plat is probably that wide, but when you see it in practice, it's not that wide, and maybe then it is going to be added, would be, so.
Okay, so we're all in agreement. We're adding a lane in by adding that turn lane in.
That's what, as I'm looking at the page, and I'm looking at the same page that's up there, that's what it looks like to me, but again, that's. An engineer should probably comment on that.
Yeah, sorry, I wasn't trying to put you.
Yeah.
It's, because it seems, I am completely fine with trail improvements on south side of Woodland and on the west side of Q because people are going to walk out there. And you can't stop people from walking out there. They'll just walk in the grass. They'll make unsafe crossings. So at least you can do that part of it. When it comes to Q, it looks like we are making it slightly larger in certain places. It's the same with Woodland with some of these dedicated turn lanes. Again, based off of studies that predate the study that we're about to do on that. Is it possible for us to consider splitting this out so that we can make the trail improvements, but not approve the road improvements?
Yeah.
Specifically the Q, the Q portion, the Q width.
Yeah.
I mean, in turn, part of this project includes Peaceful Valley extension, east to west, Yeski, and then the South Holiday connection.
I hesitate to touch those because the developer has clearly set up all of their plats and everything based around the widths that they've already selected for the roads and how they have this set up. And I don't think that would be fair to ask them to go back and have to reconfigure things for that. That would be mean, to be
Yeah,
honest.
well, and with that, I mean, it's thoughtful design in general, the way they laid out the interaction of the roadway with the commercial development proposal. So what you're talking about specifically is, can we take another critical look at the Q corridor improvements and
correct
width and turning lanes?
Correct. Why add in a lane when we're doing a study that may say that we could reduce lanes? Like and it's the same with, even how we take our design approach on Woodland, with the, putting in dedicated turn lanes. We've contemplated potentially lowering the speed to 25. Do you still need dedicated turn lanes on a 25-mile-an-hour road? Sounds like things that you would put more on highway-based roads or, higher speed roads because they need a deceleration lane to make the turn.
You're asking good questions. And I don't think we have exact answers as to what.
We don't have dedicated, for example, do we have a dedicated left turn lane on Main Street? in many places.
We do have dedicated turn lanes on a lot of roads that pedestrians use. If you look at Madison in particular, all along campus, it's 2 lanes and a turn lane. And the goal of designing the road that way is because part of the function of the road is to keep traffic moving. And when you have only 2 lanes and no dedicated turn lane, that at least, and you can correct me if I'm wrong about this, Lauren, but you run the hazard of people coming around blind on a corner. So as long as we've got the need to move traffic along this, we have to do it in a way that is somewhat safe. So that third lane that turn lane does add width, but it can also provide a safety factor too, in terms of turning left or right. It's not exclusive.
you
It's
talking
not
about?
either.
Can I clarify, because you just said, for what you just said, are you talking about, if we're talking about the one on southbound on Q, is that the one
Yeah.
you're talking about?
I'm talking about the concept of a third lane because if I'm interpreting correctly, it's the addition of a third lane of traffic dedicated to turning that seems to be a block that you seem to be uncomfortable with. I'm saying that they can be done safely. We see it all of the time in pedestrian areas where they're very pedestrian heavy in Madison proper. So it's with the way that you signalize it, the way that
You made an interesting comment there. I'm just trying to understand. You said that they would be blind when they come around the corner.
oh, not blind when you come around the corner, when you've got 2 lanes of traffic
Yeah.
and a long line of cars here ready to turn left because there is no turn lane, or ready to turn right, that suddenly you're driving traffic all into 1 lane, and that can get kind of hairy at times.
Can I ask you this isn't meant to be a gotcha or anything. Have you watched traffic on Century, like going in and out of town?
Yes, yeah,
Do you know what happens when people turn left?
yes, yeah, I'm aware,
So isn't that more of a design flaw than because we allow the behavior to occur because people use a bike lane to turn right? Or to go around people that are turning left?
it could be, and also a third lane doesn't necessarily prevent us from being pedestrian friendly. That's my point. A third lane doesn't prevent us from being pedestrian
I
friendly.
will respectfully disagree. Adding any lanes is pedestrian unfriendly because lanes are for cars, not for pedestrians. So it's going to make them have to have a longer traverse across the intersection. Whereas if there is no turn lane, then they're going to have 1 less lane that a car could potentially interact with them.
Well, we digress because we're not actually the experts on this. So
We're not the experts, but we're voting on
we
this to
are
approve it,
voting on this.
so-
Yes, I don't think we're necessarily making an exclusive one or the other argument.
Well, I know we've sort of brought up an approach to engage the developer in a meaningful discussion about the corridor. And I see Mike's the attorney representing Tierney's. Would you like to entertain discussion about their willingness to
Sure.
engage us in that?
I wanted to explain that we did a large traffic study through KL Engineering, which is one of the recognized traffic engineering experts in Dane County. We did that study, a year ago, Don, or whatever. Veerbiker followed the KL study in designing all of the plans for this project, and all their interactions with the staff have basically followed the KL study. So I guess we have no problem with having an MSA overlay study or whatever on some of the elements of this, but we've gotten pretty far down the road in following a study which was done by recognized experts the staff didn't disagree with. And all our plans by Veerbiker were done based on that study. And that was a very elaborate thing. I mean, somebody could probably run back in the files and grab it. But that was what was done, and that's why we're here where we're at. So I just want to point that out. The other thing I just wanted to mention is if we're going to pull out a thread of the garment and then have something unravel or whatever, we said we could get this done by September 1. And if we start, changing things, Don will have to comment on that. And I don't know if one of his contractors may be here, but we start monkeying around the schedule. That could delay things. So hopefully we can stick to what the KL study was and what Veerbiker designed and approve this tonight. And if you want to have the MSA study, that's fine. And I'm sure that there can be arrangements made between the developer, the village, and MSA or whatever down the road. You've got TIF money and, school has apparently options and things like that, but that should be dealt with separately. and not delay the approval of the agreement, because we really did follow the process that the village wanted us to follow by having the KL study done. I don't know if you guys remember it. It's ones with all those little green and yellow lights and things like that, where they do a very in-depth statistical analysis of all the intersections and all the routes. So I just wanted to comment on that.
Thank you, Mike.
And I would also, oh, sorry, I didn't. Okay. I would also add that when we're talking about the scope of the MSA study, part of it is we're not doing any construction, it's conceptual design. And when you start talking about geometry changes, those are long-term changes. So there might need to be a level of stomaching it, of this is the change that we have now based on what exists. And then 5-10 years down the road, here's the change that's going to be made based on the recommendation of this study. So it's not something that in 6 months we're going to be like, okay, and now we're changing this. It's going to be something that's a little farther down the road. So I would just try to keep in mind some of those timeframes.
All right. Thank you, Lauren. Yeah, Don. Mhm.
Just like to say that, we were asked to do your mic's on mute.
Mike's on.
Sorry.
There? Okay. Yeah. We were asked by the village to do one of the best. We did it. And then working with the school, they had some great ideas with staff where we just originally we're not going to have a 10-foot wide trail on the south side of Woodland. And we actually had we scampered to change when you change a plat, it ripples down through it. It's a big deal. But we scampered and we did it. And it would be like if you spent years planning a house, you're ready to go. And they said, you know, we got to have another study here. It was a very reputable study. And we made the modifications to do the 10-foot trail. That was some great ideas. But as far as tearing this thing apart, I really don't want to go there.
All right. Thank you, Don. Yeah. All right. Any more questions, Robert?
I want to clarify. Nobody's talking about tearing this apart. We're talking about Q. We're not talking about changing. In fact, I openly said not changing any plats inside the project. There was none of that. I'm sorry that a study was conducted. Well, not sorry. A study was conducted based off the best information at the time. We just had a vote to do another study in that area. Metrics might change a little bit once that's done. I'm still going to maintain that this does not, as presented, does not really address child safety. I will tell you, based off of my discussion with the school district, they talked about where they're going to put a crossing guard, and they said they were going to actually put them on the north and east side of Woodland and Q, because they felt that was the safest place that they could stick somebody that they didn't think that even with the improvements that it would be safe enough to cross on the south side. When we talk about doing the improvements on the south side, we're talking about what we discussed at the last meeting, which is children will look for shortcuts. They will go at the shortest path. They won't necessarily go where the crossing guard is. We just have to do the best that we can, even though people don't want to cross Q or they don't want to send their children across Q. There will be people that want to do it. We have to account for them. Again, if we're not talking about splitting hairs with the main parts of this project, we're talking about a couple turn lanes on Q. I still think that it would be to our benefit if we approved the improvements to the south side of Woodland and to the trailway improvements on the south side of Woodland, the west side of Q, and everything else that's in the TID, but still exclude specifically the Q intersection. We just heard tonight that there's going to be funding coming in from the school district to help do improvements on there, on the painting of the lines. I think that we don't necessarily need to dip into TID yet to touch that area. We could come back and look at it. If we give the developer everything else but this one little bit of the area, I'm failing to see what it is that we're talking about here that would be so catastrophic to this project. Like, I don't see how this would prevent anything else from going on. I'm being honest here. Like, there doesn't appear to be any impact of this to that project at all that's being presented. I mean, it's not even where the commercial improvements are. We're talking about commercial improvements further north.
All right. Anything else?
No, I'll stop there.
All right. Thank you. Tricia, you had a comment.
Oh, no, actually, I was just kind of trying to circle back on all of the discussion, and Todd had mentioned before, and I thought it was a good idea, is that as this moves forward and one of the first steps is to have everybody that's kind of in this space, in this area, at the table and have a good discussion as a full group, just kind of sharing information, what's already been done, what's known, what's planned. That would be helpful. That was my only comment with that.
Thank you. Any other comments, Erin?
Yeah. I think the information presented tonight is definitely way more helpful than I guess what I saw at the last meeting from not being there, but I think we have responsibility, and this maybe echoes some of my earlier sentiments on our last agenda item, but it's really unfortunate that it gets to the point where we are in the position of having to make a very quick decision based off of how these processes normally go, based off of, you know, this need for a bike path. And that's not on the school, that's not on us solely, it's on, I guess, like our entire community, right? Of like, we should have been all discussing this earlier of how are we going to make this happen so that it's not a small part of this larger agreement pushing this entire thing through, or we're not able to make thoughtful decisions or come to an agreement on a board of what we're even negotiating here. Cause this, you know, this is us putting a large public investment into something that, you know, was decided because of this need for this little path that when I saw that honestly 2 weeks ago, I was like, when that path juts out into a bus lane at the school, it's not even to the front of the school pedestrian friendly area. So that really was uncomfortable for me that we are now putting this entire project on something that doesn't even feel remotely safe. I'm disappointed. I think that we just made this investment to, as we said in this plan, it's a pedestrian oriented, aesthetically pleasing street, transforming it, and then to then say, well, we're going to do all this. That's still, in a way, yes, it accommodates the pedestrians, but it still feels very like car centric. And you know, we don't know what's going on in these lots. We don't know, are these going to be huge parking lots? Is this, we don't know. And that's not also being considered in this. And I will say Lauren's comments ease some of my worries on that. And I appreciate your expertise on, you know, what the purpose of the study is and how we can adjust things. But I guess I just really wish that we weren't in this position to begin with, that this is now us, you know, saving the child's safety when that's not on the school either at all intentionally. But I don't know.
Can I ask a question? Is just looking at the map right now, is the concern as we talk about different public improvements along Woodland Drive and Q as part of this project, is the concern the improvements between Peaceful Valley Parkway and that intersection and Yeski Drive?
I mean, that's one of concern.
Oh, okay. I guess why I'm asking this question right now is, you know, I mean, I don't know where you all are at on this, but if it's limited to a certain area, then we have the ability to potentially at least have a discussion about pulling that out.
That was why I was asking earlier, is like, does it have to be the whole thing? And the developer's response was, well, if you start pulling threads, you're gonna start pulling.
Well, I mean,
apart.
I think
we're just
we need-
asking for one.
Yeah, I get, and that's where we need to have, I don't know what the answer to that is, but I'd like to have, if that's where the board's at is, I mean, again, we do have the ability to go into closed session. I would like to, you know, then that's valuable to us to be able to, you know, maybe that can get pulled out. I don't know. I mean, I'm not speaking for them, but, you know, I'd at least like to have the conversation with them about that.
Okay. Closed session? Is it feeling like we should go into closed session? Yeah. Oh, okay. We tend
don't
not,
know
yeah,
that
we don't
it's-
have public comment at this point. Are you?
It's from the contractor's point of view, talking for Don Tierney, the developer.
Okay. Can I ask you what, then I'll ask, what are the implications for the contractors?
Functionally, how this would work if you approved
Can we just
the
get
agreement tonight.
Just introduce yourself. If
I'm
you could, your
Dave,
name
Dave
and where you're-
Mall Construction, been Don Tierney's grading contractor for 30 years. So functionally, how this would work, if you approved the agreement tonight as it is, and you said, we're not excited about Highway Q. I'm the contractor. I didn't plan on doing those improvements along Highway Q until next year anyway. So if you're like, wondering what's gonna happen by school year this year, none of that was gonna happen anyway. We were concentrating on Woodland. We were hoping to get Woodland done by September 1st. I don't have any plans on doing any of the work on Highway Q until next year.
Thank you. Thank you. That's very helpful, actually. Brian, if we were to go into closed session, if we were to modify this agreement, could we do that in closed session and bring it back out today? What does that look like?
Well, let's, I
Or
mean,
could we-
my suggestion would be let's have a discussion in closed session and then then probably Todd and I and others step out of the closed session, have a discussion with the developer. I mean, I'm looking at Exhibit B right now, and we do have this broken out in as different project components. And
What page? What page? are
so
you
I'm looking, I mean, I'm looking at pages like 131, 130, 131, 132, 133 of the packet. I mean, it seems like there's potentially a path to move forward right now where we could have certain components included in this agreement with the idea of maybe other components ultimately are part of it too, but the board may not have a comfort level with that at this point. Now, so what I need more information from you all, likely in closed session, so that we then can have a discussion with the developer to see, is there a way to split this up in some form or fashion? But we need to get more guidance from the board, I think, on this issue before we can talk to the developer about it.
All right. Then, back to the agenda.
I guess I would say in regards to, I mean, if my understanding is correctly, we're talking here about two turn lanes. Is that correct? We're talking about the one at Holiday and we're talking about the one at Peaceful Valley. I think the thing is here, again, I think Aaron is spot on. We don't know what type of commercial development is going to go there at all. I mean, we can guess to some degree based on the size of the lots, but we don't know that with certainty yet. And I guess I don't necessarily, because, you know, it is, I would hope, going to be in the nearer term. I wouldn't necessarily object to approving the agreement entirely as it's written, to tell you the truth. I think the turn lanes is just a couple of minutia here. Obviously, you know, and I appreciate what Dave said, you know, they're not going to make the improvements to Q until next year. Clearly, what does that do? That gives them time to work with MSA potentially on the study. And the thing is, if we were going to do like a road diet or something that would be years. That's not something that we're going to do next year. My opinion is frankly, just go ahead and approve this. Let them get to work.
All right. Other thoughts? Nyla?
I was just gonna say, I'm with Sam. I think that they've shown that they want to be collaborative. And so as MSA is getting underway with the study, just to be working, you know, with Rebecca and the developer as well. And through the process of figuring out what the best thing is to do with Q.
Thank you, Tricia. Nyla?
One of the things that I hear from residents, when something is done and a short time later, it's redone, is their distaste for that because they have to work around it when it's being done. It costs money. So I would like to work on this in a way so that does not happen. That is one of my concerns. If we, you know, I want to get this done. I want it to be safe for children, but I don't want to spend extra time and effort and money redoing.
So can I ask, and Brian, I don't know if this is an allowable question or not. If we were to approve this tonight and then, and as Sam suggested, work over the next year with the study to look at what we do with the turn lanes, does that work for you in terms of not doing it and redoing it?
The question is, if we pass this, how binding is it and can the changes be made?
So I got to answer that in two ways.
Okay.
One, it's a contract, it's a binding document. Now, I've been working with the village for 20 years, and I can tell you that my experience with Don and Jerry Tierney and Mike Lawton is that if it makes sense to change it, they would change it. In other words, they would open the agreement back up, but it is a binding agreement if it's signed.
Right.
And I would also say that, you know, again, we are talking about commercial development here. What does commercial development create? Commercial development generates traffic. More than likely, if there's gonna be commercial development there, what's gonna be asked for anyway? A turn lane.
Commercial development doesn't have to create traffic. I mean, there are plenty of downtowns that have superior commercial development to Waunakee that discourage vehicles and promote pedestrian. I wouldn't, it will, development will create traffic if we create the conditions for traffic to proliferate. So I mean, while I understand your approach and saying just approach it as is, I still think it sends incorrect, just because you know it's going to be 6 to 12 months before we have a full effect from the study, doesn't mean that you have to keep contributing to a situation in that meantime. So I get that I'm quickly becoming into a very small minority on this one, but there is no need to cede to cars immediately on these things. And if we want to promote pedestrian traffic, then we make it more pedestrian friendly. It's kind of a little bit, if you build it, they will come. It's the same for cars. If you build roads, the cars will come. Induced demand is a very real thing. So I, for what it's worth, I would hope that we would at least entertain going into closed session to have the discussion and negotiation. And then if we come out of it and vote it down, then we do. And no harm lost. And we only lose another 30 minutes tonight, and then we all go home and it passes as is. So I would hope that we could at least have that.
I have an idea for closed session.
Yeah,
Okay.
I would like us to go into closed session.
I was gonna say I support that. I think we're all talking and it's not out of good faith or any of the relationships. I just think this is an agreement and we're not on the same page of what change could look like in the future.
All right, so I am now looking at the packet and what page is the language on for closed session? Is it on?
It's on page 2.
Yeah.
Thank you. So. Oh, thank you. The village board may convene in closed session as authorized by Wisconsin statute 19.85 1E for the purpose of deliberating or negotiating the purchasing of public properties, investing of public funds, or conducting other specified public business. Whenever competitive or bargaining reasons require a closed session, the village board may reconvene in open session and discuss and take action on the subject matter discussed in closed session. I'm going to memorize that one of these days. All right, I would like to make a motion that we go into closed session.
Second.
All right, and that requires a roll call vote. So with your randomized voter.
Exciting. Trisha Brown,
Yes.
Nyla Fry,
Yes.
Sam Kaufman.
Yes.
Robert McPherson.
Yes.
Kristen Rungy,
Yes.
Aaron Moran,
Yes.
Joe Zitzelsberger.
Yes.
All right, and we will go into closed session beginning at 8:28 once the room is cleared. Yes. Are we recording? We are back in open session. All right, so Brian, you have language for motion.
So here's a potential motion. Motion to approve the public improvements and TIF agreement with the following change to section 5A, the addition of this language. Notwithstanding the preceding sentence, the village and the developer agree that the developer shall not commence improvements on the County Highway Q right-of-way south of Yeski Drive until after having further discussions on this area pursuant to the MSA study, which discussions shall occur prior to January 31st of 2025, period. If no agreement is reached by February 28th, 2025, the default is to the plans in the existing agreement.
So moved.
I'll second.
All right, any discussion on the motion? All right, seeing none, let's do a roll call vote.
So I'm just gonna go random. Joe Zitzelsberger,
Yes.
Aaron Moran,
Yes.
Kristen Rungy,
Yes.
Sam Kaufman,
Yes.
Robert McPherson,
Yes.
Trisha
Yes.
Brown, and Nyla Fry.
Abstain.
All right, motion carries. And with that, we only have one additional item.
Motion to
on-
adjourn.
Thank you.
Second.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
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 All right,